Warm welcome to all of you, to the wonderful audience, and to my esteemed panelists. Very happy to have all of you on board for this webinar. It's a very relevant webinar. So before we begin, I want to give our audience a little bit of an introduction to the webinar. So obviously, the essence of this webinar is, of course, to talk about, recruitments, training, opportunities in the luxury sector. Why this topic? Why did we choose this topic? I think it's a very relevant topic, and given the times, I think people just want to hear, positive things, positive news. Everybody's wondering what's going to happen to the luxury sector post-COVID. I think people are just now done with COVID-19. We want to know what's in store in the coming years, in the coming times, and what, who better than the experts, all of you on the panel today, to tell us, to guide us, to advise us on what we should do, what the young talents, young professionals, working professionals, what are they looking at in the coming years. So of course, the panel needs no introduction today, but I would still like to introduce each and every one of my wonderful panelists. So I'm going to start with my left, Ms. Richa. So I would like to introduce Ms. Richa Dogra, who is, of course, the Capability Development Leader at Diageo India. Richa, I request you to very quickly just say a hi to the wonderful audience from your side.
Hi, good evening, and thanks for joining. Looking forward to the session.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Mr. Sarosh Modi, Director of Luxury Watch Works. Sarosh, if you could just, just say hello to the wonderful audience.
Hello, everyone.
Next, we have Ms. Delna Alavia. Delna, we've had the pleasure of having, invited you for one of our panels previously, and it's always been a pleasure. And of course, I'd like to introduce you to the audience today. So please welcome, Ms. Delna Alavia, Head HR India Estee Lauder Companies. Delna, please, if you could just say hello to our wonderful
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much. Next is Mr. Pai. Of course, we've had you for one of our very, very first introductory, Zoom webinars right in the beginning of, the pandemic, when the pandemic hit us, and you were absolutely a pleasure. And you said, yes, you'll come for the webinar, and it's been great since then, talking to you. So Mr. Pai, warm welcome to you. And of course, you need no introduction, but Mr. Pai, for those of you who don't know, he's the CEO of Mercedes-Benz TVS Sundaram Motors. Welcome, Mr. Pai. Could you please say hello to our audience?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for having me here today.
You're welcome. Pleasure. Last but not the least, Mr. Veera Raghavan. We've been trying to get you for so many, webinars and power talks, but you've just always been so busy. But I'm so glad that we, have you on board here today. So of course you need no introduction, but to our wonderful audience, Mr. Veera Raghavan, who's the Assistant Vice President Training, Reliance Brands Limited. Veera, if you could just say a hello to our audience.
Thank you very much, Smita. I have not been difficult. I think we had the first conversation, but yeah, I will work with Priyanka to join in. I love these webinars. It's just that
the students love to hear from you.
And I've had the pleasure of being at the campus once. So thank you very much for the hospitality. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, everyone. And without further ado, I think let's begin with our discussion. I'm going to start with my first question, and the question is to all of you, to all the panelists. So please feel free to whoever wants to start answering, and then we can go turn by turn. So my first question is, during times like these, when work from home is the new norm, it must be difficult to check in face to face. How are you making sure your employees are engaged and motivated? I mean, I know how difficult it's been for me to meet my team. It must be so challenging. So what's happening? How are you all coping up with that? And I can see Ms. Richa nodding her head. So I'm going to start with you. Yes, Richa, what would you like to tell us?
Yeah, sure. So I think at the times like these, when work from home or rather work from anywhere is becoming more acceptable by all the employees. Employees have been very, very quick to adapt to the remote way of working.
Yeah.
But of course, work from home or work from anywhere has its own demerits, especially when it comes to health. Employees have been facing burnout because of a never-ending day. Many employees they miss in-person conversations. You actually miss those water cooler conversations, but what were very easy to have when you were in the office. A lot of collaboration through these kind of conversations. I think that's something that people have been missing. So I think as an organization, it becomes very important for us to care for our people and also ensure that we have enough social touch points. Through various webinars, for example, and other leadership interactions. So we've done a lot of things during the last couple of months beyond what we were already doing. Things like fitness sessions, virtual fitness sessions, Zumba classes. I think that's something which happened across all organizations. So that's something that we also didn't miss. So we did that. We also ran multiple webinars, very similar to what you are doing here.
Yeah.
Getting leaders in one room on Zoom or other channels, and getting topics which are very relevant to the current times. For example, how do you adapt to change? What is resilience, or how to be more productive during these times. So these are the kind of
conversation, constant.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think these are the ways through which we try to create more social touch points so that people feel connected to each other. And I'm sure a lot of other leaders and teams, they had their own engagement stuff, so that also kept happening in parallel. But I think these are some of the ways through which we managed the engagement for our people.
Sounds
Your thoughts from others?
Yeah, Veera, would you like to add?
It's wonderful, Richa, what you have shared. I mean, more or less similar lines. The Zumbas, the health clinics, what we call, were the part of the the process over here. We have also had the exercise challenges and certain yoga classes that we were doing, and March 21st introduced us to new words like Zoom, GeoMeet, webinars, and stuff like that, which we never even thought of beforehand. And yes, just to add to it, in our industry, which is automotive sales, we have to be with the customers. I mean, unfortunately for us, work from home, probably I can manage by clearing mails and stuff, but my frontline staff need to be there in the market to get into. So it was difficult initially, but we could manage with arrangement of Zooms and webinars. And Mr. Veera must be happy if I take the name GeoMeet also. So there were a lot of web-based training that we have conducted, because one difficulty we had was to engage the employees and keep them occupied, because if you keep them away for long, then there would be a lot of other issues. So we had web-based trainings, product presentations, we had quiz competitions. In fact, some of the fun games we have had, which used to go, we used to cut off time was say morning 10 to 4:30. It used to go extended till 7:30 because the participation was good. So yeah, those are the certain things. And we also utilize this time to get our team shifted towards the more of virtual reality, the virtual consultation, and how the things are going to change in the luxury space. I mean, you just cannot operate the way you were operating before 21st of March, and then suddenly you see a different new normal coming in. So that was one thing which probably we utilized it very well, getting people accepting the new normal, and then be prepared when it comes to lockdown unlock. So yes, more or less what Richa said. Yeah, these are the few other things that we had added on in our workplaces. Thank you.
That's
Thanks,
very insightful. Thank you, Mr. Pai.
Thanks, Ajit. I thought there were two parts to this question. One is on what we have been doing and what we are doing. So I think almost everything everybody has done. Two, three broad, what do you say, thoughts that we had right at the beginning. I think we saw this coming a little early because of the brands that we operate in. So once we got over, March 20th, I think March 16th, we started completely going online, offices closed. I think there's been a phase in the first 3 months, being agile was important. So just being nimble footed and doing many things. But once you come into June or July, we slowed down what we are doing. I think that was very important because people were short of dying of Zoom. I think everything else happened. So that way, I'm so happy that once we had some stores, because all our stores, 90% of our stores operate in malls, we came down to that. I think what's important is what we're going to do going forward. So when Richa spoke about socially getting people together, there's a limit to what you can do. The reality is without the touch and the feel, it gets a little lost. So many of those things we have not done till now, and it's a fairly conscious decision, because now there is the energy of fun and games. So things like online quizzes, what we call something called game of zones. We did many of those things. I think now is the time to do these water cooler conversations. We have rolled out a series called Fab Chats. We have something called Chai Sutta Break. Many of these things, what we call no agenda meetings, because these are things that get people together. And I think it's very important to curate the groups. In my office, we actually have 3 offices. There are 4 floors, and typically you have a small group in that floor. So I think it's a fine mix between having people from the same floor together and across departments, because I think that brings a little bit of a group together. I think the biggest challenge, and I don't have an answer to it, is fatigue has set in. People are just not happy sitting at home. Now we have a phase where people are saying, let me go for a drive to Lonavala or to Jaipur and come back. But that's going to get over very fast, because now we are back to normal. As we speak now, 90% of our stores are open. So I think that's important. Last point, I want to talk about what Ajit said. What is happening around the globe in terms of distance selling. The reality today is that in our business, about 31% of our business comes without meeting customers face to face as we speak today. So we do a lot of distance selling. We do a lot of what we call virtual conversations. Some of you, Smita, I think we would have sent a message across. We did a fairly large event called the Luxury Shopping Festival. Yes. We did a 3-week online. It was just about conversations of this kind, but also we did something where people could view brands and their products and their stories. So I think that's important. That's one way. And the reason I'm bringing this up is people in the front line are engaged by these activities. So as in our place, we call it the tail office. Out of our employee strength of about 5,000, hardly 700 in the office. So the 4,300 people are engaged by things like this. They just want to know, what are we going to do with the customer? And I think that's the bigger piece that we look at. Thanks.
Thank you, Veera. That was very insightful. Delna, Sarosh. Yes, I can see. Yes.
I'd like to jump in. So, of course, I think everyone has done this, and like most of us rightly said, Zoom meetings, I think we've all had enough of it. And we realized in the first 2 months itself of the lockdown that, one, there was this pressure of adjusting to work from home. There was this uncertainty of we don't know what's really happening. Then a lot of people had to adjust to, kids studying from home, husbands being home, a lot of this new environment that was causing stress. So one of the things that we did quite early was we launched like a helpline program across the board for all of our employees, where they, as well as their families, could call in, discuss their issues. It was completely confidential. Nobody in the company or HR would never know who's called or who's logged in. So that was one of the first things that we launched. Another thing that we launched was we had a clinical psychologist on board who did a couple of sessions for us. And one of the things she kept saying was like, gratitude really helps. So keeping that in mind, we worked with the global team, and India is now going to be launching what we call Estée Lauder Company's Good Works program. So there'll be like a platform where all employees can join in, and they can either volunteer for those social organizations, either volunteer their time, volunteer their money, and basis what they do, we will match that fund. So there's a certain cap, of course, by employee, but those are some of the things that we did other than all the others that sort of we got a great response from. And of course, with all the news of, various uncertainties outside, people were also worried about their jobs, worried about stores not opening, because like Veera said, we operate across malls, and for us, it was almost 100% closure. And as we gradually opened, they got engaged with their training and phase-wise training, because again, in makeup, there was again a no-touch policy. So we are still on a very stringent no-touch policy. And you can imagine if you really go into a store and you want to learn how to wear a mascara, but you're not allowed to touch the customer's not allowed to touch the product, it gets that much more difficult. So how do you transition from that sort of an environment that you're used to working into a no-touch environment? And a lot of effort went into that. So those were some of the things we did. We also realized that, most of our employees are also in the field, in the malls. And how do we engage them and how do we let them know that the top management is there? So earlier we used to have like quarterly town halls, but now we've shifted that to more engaging activities, even every month town halls with the head of the country. We're inviting our Paris office heads to come and speak to them to make sure that, they're engaged. So we've tried to incorporate all these small aspects of it to make sure that the employee feels adjusted as well as supported in the new environment.
Absolutely. That's very insightful. Sarosh, would you like to add something to what everybody already said?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for us, it's been a little different than most, primarily because we operate a highly niche and technical business where we repair and restore watches, and we represent roughly around 21 international Swiss luxury brands. So for us, we operate in almost like lab-like conditions, dust-proof environments, specialized testing machines, high technical skill set, and none of us can work from home. And I think prior to the lockdown, a week prior to the lockdown, we took a conscious decision for the health and safety of our team members to sort of, shut office for a couple of days to see. And then the next week onwards, a national lockdown was announced. So I guess the first month, my team members don't, maybe they don't admit it, but I am sure they were looking forward to that break. So I think we all gave each other a little amount of space. Eat at your time, sleep at your time, don't call each other. But I think we started, I think the lockdown was officially lifted in the first week of June. And I think prior to that, we made some conscious decisions with our Swiss partners to try and work out solutions, because if a watch comes to a service center, we don't want any of our people engaging with it, the physical contact. I mean, we can distance the person, but here we are handling tangible objects which are being used by people. So we went through the complete UV theory. Primarily, we got customized UVC boxes even before we started on 8th of June. We had the social distancing parameters within the workshops, separate tools for everybody, sanitization 5 times a day. So we had a lot of ideation to do even prior to us resuming work on the 8th of June. And I think it sort of worked out well because it gave us a little time for preparation. While we were doing that, it also gave us an opportunity to reflect back into looking into our own operations, where we could do better, where we could engage. And now, since the digital predominance was there in communication across all terms of business, we started developing a little bit of consultation to our regular clients to have them reach us through Zoom or WhatsApp video calls, etc. If they faced a certain amount of problem, we would understand, we would ask them questions based on how we would sort of diagnose a certain problem, and we started talking more. And we saw a considerable amount of good response coming from people saying, "Oh, but I'm sitting at home and I've just pulled out 5 of my watches and I see 2 of them are not working." And we would sort of guide them step by step. Okay, why don't you try turning the crown? Why don't you do this? If it's an automatic, have you wound it? If it's a manual, don't overwind it, etc., etc., etc. And I think a lot of people, of course, we had to tell them to be patient till we opened up, because I mean, you can't perform precision work online, and I cannot tell my clients to be a doctor. You know what I mean? To self-diagnosis is going to be detrimental for the health of a 10 lakh rupee watch. So I mean, yeah, I mean, for us, it's been different, but I think from 8th of June onwards, we've only done by appointment business. We see to it that no 2 clients coincide at the reception. Of course, we are not a volumetric oriented business. We are a niche business. So it's been well placed, and most of the work, and of course we started a pickup and drop service with insurance. So that sort of worked out well for most of our clients. So not only do we take care of the Mumbai region, but then we tied up with an insured logistics company to make sure that the other cities and other retailers that we work across India with also can function equally smoothly. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a bit of a learning, but I know for sure that businesses like ours do get heavily impacted because there is no way that we can do what we do sitting in the comfort of our homes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the insight. And I think many common links, between what all of you said about the personal touch, about needing to have that, like physical interface with your employees and with your customers, very important for the luxury industry. I'm going to move to the next question now because we don't have that much time, and I would like to maybe all of us to make a conscious decision to, keep the questions crisp and short so that we don't cross time. My next question is to Delna and Veera both. When hiring candidates for frontline positions, basically customer centric, positions, what are the filters that you consider before closing on the candidate? So, Delna, we'll start with you.
Sure. Okay, so I think the first thing we're looking for always is the right attitude and the passion to do the job. So those are the only two things that we believe we require, because we hire people from various backgrounds, because in makeup today, there are very few makeup academies that we hire from, but especially in the front line, right? So we hire people who could just be just graduated, or they could have been from a BPO background or an airline background, and they now want like a day job, or sometimes they don't want shifts, etc. And some of them just want to learn more makeup. So for us, it's just a various field from which we sort of keep getting CVs, and then we have a different method of filtration for the different candidates who come in. But one of the basic things that we usually check for is the right attitude and the passion to do customer service. The rest we'll teach you.
Okay, thank you. Veera?
Yep, I think what Delna said just encompasses almost everything. Reliance Brands operates about 550 stores, and we go length and breadth. So we could start off from a Steve Madden Super Dry right up to a Bottega Veneta or a Xenia. And in terms of width, it could be Hamleys right down to Muji. So first thing is, each brand has their own ethos, and I think that's important. But if I were to put down 4 things that I think are important, firstly, all my store directors, everybody is looking for joyous, positive people. We just want people who exude joy, because we are in the business of giving small joys to customers. So I think that's very important. Second thing, they should be comfortable in the presence of people and be ready to initiate a conversation, because luxury buying is about conversations, about experiences. So if you're happy in the presence of people and happy to initiate a conversation, I think that's critical for us. If you're in the Hamleys business, we tell them to play with a toy, because we are in the business of theater. We are not in the toys business. So that's something is important. Once that box is ticked, then we talk about natural flair for fashion and games. If somebody has got a natural talent, if there's a guitarist, any natural talent, we believe that the person is able to express themselves, and that's something that we look for. And lastly, we hire a lot of freshers. Anybody who's got a little bit of spunk, we just give them a chance. I think that, that's the broad.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I could see Mr. Pai wanting to say something. So I mean,
not really, but I completely agree with Mr. Veera. Sometimes, going with the cliche, we go with the conventional method of choosing the credentials of the candidates. But my experience, let me share, some of the freshers have, turned out to be wonders for me. I mean, I started believing that now, and I definitely look at the freshers first, then looking at the experienced staff.
That's wonderful. I mean, there are so many, I would say, young professionals listening to all of you, and I think they feel really encouraged, which is great, because it's very rare that they have this platform that they can actually listen to, the true advice from the experts. So thank you so much for the encouragement.
Sorry,
Ajit, you were saying something. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I said Delna made a very important point. The positive attitude and the practice, what generally is the requirement of the luxury industry. Why we prefer freshers now also is because they come without a baggage. I mean, they're open to new ideas and try out with the customers. They don't have any initiation to approach the customers. They don't have any, occupied thoughts that this will happen if I say this. So they are quite bold, and that's what works perfectly fine. we can keep polishing them, refine them as we go through, but then it's perfectly fine to start with as long as you have the right attitude.
Absolutely. Yes.
And Smita, I think what Ajit said, the other side, I believe that a lot of luxury customers like to deal with youngsters because they bring a different facet. So
Yes.
I know many of my operations heads who say, I mean, I don't want experienced people because they want freshness in their thought. I think another important thing, and I'm very proud to be in this organization, I've been here for about 3.5 years, is that we also give opportunities. So we have a program called Rock and Wrap, where you could become an assistant store manager from a fashion consultant in about 8 months.
Wow.
It's a fast track program, and Darshan very strongly believes that if you prove yourself on the floor and you know how to manage the customer and the financials, then you have it in you to move up. So we are very particular about that.
Wonderful. I think that's a great initiative that you have at RBL. Thank you so much. I think my next question is to Mr. Sarosh, Richa, and Mr. Pai. The words service and luxury go hand in hand. Given that your sectors are all about personalized services and experiences, are there any technical competencies that you look for in a candidate? Any technical capabilities? So we can start with you, Mr. Sarosh.
All right. So our business essentially, I mean, if you just put it in layman's terms, it will be operations, and then there is the technical aspect of it. So technically speaking, of course, it's a huge problem to cultivate talent pool over here, because we don't have a watchmaking school in India. So essentially, you would have watchmakers who are genetically trained, a father to son or an uncle to nephew, or somebody who's just worked as an apprentice, but not necessarily do they come with the skill sets which are looked out by our Swiss partners. So if the person comes with experience, he will have to unlearn what he has learned and willing to be learning again to how to process and work in the environment that we provide them in terms to the way our partners are willing to train our technicians. It takes an average of roughly around 15 years for a person to sit on a bench and to grow out of the apprentice level. But that's the technical side of it. From the operations side, I think I just believe in one thing, that when you are serving someone, okay, serve them with the same ideology of how you would like to be served by someone, and that I think is really important, because, and I think this applies to any industry, any job, whether it's luxury or whether it's a UDP restaurant. I mean, it just doesn't matter. If you are warm to somebody, if you're considerate, if you treat them the way you would like to be treated, I think that takes care of more than 50%. The rest is you adapting to certain skill sets and knowing your product and the history. And if at all you want to get a little further, I would say that spend that little 20% extra of your time daily to learn more about what others are doing, so that you're just not like a parrot talking to somebody about just your product, but at least you can discuss a much broader perspective in terms of what people know. For example, in the fashion business, I think it's always a good way to address people with what actually they are wearing, because indirectly you're complementing their tastes, and you reinforce the fact that you're not a brand salesperson, but actually a purveyor of luxury. So I think that's what people always overlook and don't cultivate that little extra about themselves. So I guess that's my take on it.
That's a wonderful take and useful tips, I think, for the audiences. Richa, Mr. Pai, I mean, if you want to step in and add something.
Yeah, if you would like to share, you would like me to share certain things from my sphere of luxury thing. Yes, in after sales, certain jobs are pretty much technical, and we would like to the candidate to be, absolutely from technical background. I mean, there is no other substitution to that. But yes, when it comes to sales, we look for a techno-commercial person whose preference over the last few years, I've seen the trend changing from only techno-commercial to a person with a lot of flair. As Mr. Sarosh has rightly pointed out, every customer's tastes are different. I mean, you can't have a standard operating process in the luxury industry that you serve. Whoever comes, you will serve the same set of experience. That is not what customer is looking for. Every customer looks for a different experience. One particular salesperson may be successful with the one set of customer, he may not be successful with the other. So other than techno-commercial aspects, which is very important in our industry, we also look for flair, as Veera has pointed out, and some sort of spunk in the person who can talk to customer and break the ice and start off with a conversation. Yeah. And once you get into conversation, a lot of things happen over a conversation rather than just telling or listing out the USPs of your product and the price and the discounts. It doesn't work always. Most of the time, it's a nice conversation, and you don't really talk about the price or the product, but build a rapport and then come to the final 5 minutes for doing the deal. That's what we look forward to in sales. Not necessarily he has to be only from technical background.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, if it comes to luxury marketing, I would say a lot of ideas need not be from the luxury background alone, but anybody comes from a background where he has a lot of ideas to toy with and then experiment with, we would love to work with them.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Pai. Richa, what would you like to add?
Yeah, sure. So I think nothing different from what you all have already covered. Maybe the way I'll articulate it is going to be a little different. So I think when it comes to technical roles, it's quite obvious that, I'm from an alcobev industry. So it's quite obvious that we would look for a person to have understanding of the brands because those are very, very technical roles. But if I talk about very common commercial roles, so I think I would just go with three competencies that we would look for in any candidate. And the first one would be around understanding consumer. So your understanding of the consumer behavior becomes very, very important because, the luxury sector itself is being perceived very differently now. It's constantly evolving, especially with Gen Y coming in and, they are going to be in the next couple of years, the maximum consumers of luxury brands. So for them, the way the things are evolving, I think it becomes very, very important for our, people who are working in luxury to understand consumer behavior, to understand what really motivates them, what really do they need. So I think that's something which would be very, very important for me in this particular question. The second one would be, I think, very similar to what you all already covered, which would be around, the person being very curious. Curious in a way to, constantly learn. The world is changing, the world is evolving at such a fast pace, and, what is relevant today may just become obsolete tomorrow. So how do you stay relevant? How do you keep, constantly learning, be curious to learn, every time something new. So that's something is very, very important. The third important competency, and for the benefit of audience, I would really like to say this, that data and analytics would also become very, very important. There's massive amount of data which exists, and the ability of an individual to be able to cull out insights from that data and make relevant analytics for you to operate in this sector would become very, very important. So that would be my take on this question, Smita.
Absolutely.
So Richa, product knowledge is not important, is it?
No, it is, of course, but then this is something that can always be acquired once you've joined the organization. So I think when you're looking at hiring a candidate, these are a couple of competencies that you would definitely need. But once you're in the system, of course, product knowledge becomes very, very important. But I think the question was particularly for candidates, and hence I skipped that competency.
That is very helpful. I think what you all covered is because I completely agree that, someone who has a very, very flexible approach, someone who's smiling, someone who's pleasing to work with, can be a team player, has fresh ideas, wants to talk to people. You can't be someone who is not comfortable talking to people, I think. And of course, someone who's eager to learn every day and maybe even do their little bit of own homework. I think that's fabulous information, and I think very, very helpful because, at an educational, coming from the education sector, we deal with the young generation, the Gen Z, millennials, if you want to call them. They have these questions, how do I prepare myself? I want to work in this sector. What can I do? And whatever you are all sharing is, I know how valuable this is, for them to take away from. So really, thank you so much for doing that. Moving on to my next question.
Just one point I wish to add here, Smita, if you can permit me. One more thing that we have started and been very successful is the psychometric analysis of the candidates. I mean, that is something which we follow quite regularly, and 99% of the time it has turned out to be true. The analysis that comes out of the candidate, because you cannot judge a candidate over an interview of 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but then this results more often than not returns you with the right characteristic of the candidate. That is something which we rely on.
Okay, so for those of the audiences who don't know, could you just explain very, very briefly what is the psychometric analysis that you follow?
Okay, it's a series of questions, similar questions asked at the different intervals, interspersed with different questions. So it also gauges the way you think, how you will react, how your analytical abilities, and how consistent you are in your approach. And when a situation comes, how do you tend to react to that? So the more the variations, the more the difficulty with the person, but consistent approach, this person is going to handle any kind of stress, pressure, whatever it is, he'll consistently do well. That is what something comes out of this psychometric mappings and tests. So
that is very helpful for you to
and if I may just add to what Ajit just said, I think it is also important for participants to know that these psychometric tests are not used to just filter people out. These are basically, they just help us to build a background for that candidate and to be able to ask the right questions when we are interviewing the person face to face or in any other medium. So that's all. I mean, it doesn't really mean that you would get out of the interview list just because you didn't.
That's one of the levels. That's
yes.
not everything.
It helps us with a list of questions to ask the candidate.
Absolutely.
The best part to answer psychometric mapping is go with your heart and mind together. Don't think too much on a question. Then you will tend to give an answer which you think is right, or you think the question needs this answer. So you tend to lose your characteristics, and that's where it can go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for I think being so very factual and sharing all these insights with the audiences. My next question is to Veera and Delna. What are the new innovations in training and skills development that you have observed in your sector over the last couple of years? And what skill set will you be looking for in a candidate, considering, going forward, considering to hire them? Let's first, I think, talk about maybe innovations that you have seen, which have maybe popped up in the last 5 years, six years, with respect to training and development of employees in your respective organizations. Of course, the question is to Veera and Delna, but I request everybody to jump in. So we'll start with Veera.
Delna, I thought Delna was going to speak. Delna, all yours.
I'm sorry I missed that. Delna, we'll start with you.
Ladies first, so yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so actually for us, I think the biggest revolution has been online and e-commerce, because that's been a big shift. And while we are in the luxury makeup sector, so for us, online selling now especially is all about virtual selling, and how do you do that whole virtual selling. So we've got a lot of training that we've got on board, modules that we've got both for the corporate office as well as for the teams, where we select the people who we feel have an aptitude for doing social selling or online selling. And then we take them through specific modules of training and bite-sized trainings as well, because it's not just about talking to the consumer, it's about having the right technology, it's about using the technology correctly, it's about so many things like how do you hold your camera for the right angle, the lighting. So it gets into a lot of detail in terms of those things, and as well as for the corporate office as well, because obviously e-commerce, pure players, as well as your own brand.coms have to be developed, and in the current world much more than before. So we have a boot camp that we put our marketing managers through every year. It's like a 3-day workshop. That's an internally designed program. So I think a lot of investment in the last few years has been made in the whole e-com and online space for us. And how do we then deploy these programs now virtually? Because earlier the bootcamp used to be obviously a physical boot camp where we got international speakers to come in, but now how do we change all this very quickly into a module? And I think we've been quite successful because our first virtual 3-day boot camp is going to be in September. So just catching up with all of this. And it also makes sense because I mean, one way to look at it is this is an opportunity for all of us to see how travel and expenses are completely being looked at differently. Right? Earlier, for trainings like this, we all flew to Paris, and depending on the level you were at, you flew to business class, and that's all going to change. So now you're just going to log in for half a day, for 3 days on your computer. And that's a very different way of looking at it. But how do you then keep people engaged? What are the little things that you can infuse into the training to still make sure there's high touch, that we call, which is a luxury experience while doing the training? So a lot of it has gone into developing these, and I think a lot more will come along as sometimes you're not given a choice to start thinking differently. So this is one of the things that everyone has, I think, been forced to do. So it's been great. I think it's a good time to start innovating much faster, especially in the training field.
Thank you. I think that was very insightful. Veera, what would you like to add? Yeah.
So well said, Delna. I'm sorry, Smita, I'm going to change that question. What was relevant 5 years back is irrelevant. So I'm not even going there. Sure. To be honest, what was relevant last year itself is looking alien to me today and to all of us. So I think that's the first important piece. In terms of innovation and training, I really don't want to call it innovation. I'm also talking about what's happening in the world. It doesn't mean that in our organization, we are doing all of it or doing some of it. First thing is that today we are moving in from an age of what we call digital immigrants. People like me are digital immigrants. We are trying to figure out what this is, to an entire world of digital natives who are born into this digital space. So in terms of whatever we do, we need to be clearly aware. I think in the last 1.5 years, all of us have realized that full day programs are difficult to run. Engagement face-to-face itself is tough. And now we have gone into a world where you don't even know what's happening on the other side. So I was overseeing a PTA meeting, and the teacher was trying to tell them that, you know what, please put your videos on, you energize the trainer. So that's the world that we are in today. So in that context, first thing for me personally, and this is something that I've been talking to my team, the onus of learning has shifted from the organization to the learner. I think that's a critical shift. Even in terms of engagement, one question is what is the organization doing to keep the employee engaged? But the other question that's important is, what is the employee doing to keep himself or herself engaged? And that you will see it playing out in all your engagement surveys and things like that. So I think that's something that's very important. Fun platforms is very important. Unfortunately, in the digital space, everybody is wanting to be like Instagram and Facebook, where there's something new. So a lot of training, more than actually content, I'm believing that you are able to incite that particular employee to start thinking and saying, what can I learn on their own? What can I do separately? I think that's important. And I completely agree with what Delna said, camera angle. So, we're doing some work around that. We do a lot of distance selling work. In luxury, the distance selling has to be at a level that's unmatched. And we are constantly struggling with telling, 2,000 people across how to do this, because digitally also there's a challenge. So I think as an organization, you'll have to figure this out as we go along. Personalized learning is in. Onus of training is shifting as much to the employee as the organization. And over the last 4 or 5 months, we have learned webinars and all of it. Delna was talking about a 3-day boot camp. I can't even visualize how we are going to do it. I really can't visualize. However, the other side that I have to say is we have a ritual called a family day, where the entire family comes to the office. This time, a virtual family day, it was mad. It was absolutely mad. But the feedback that we're getting is that, let's just do it virtual. It's still a lot of fun. We can sit at home and do what we want. So I think over the next 3-4 months, that's the journey that we're going to take.
Sure. Thank you so much for that. That was very helpful. Moving on to my next question for Mr. Sarosh and Mr. Pai. For candidates who are already working in the luxury sector, do you think constant updating of knowledge is required, and knowledge and skill set? Do you think that's a mandatory for them to keep maybe grooming themselves or taking trainings?
On a lighter note, is that a question? We are all aware of the Darwinian evolutionary theory of survival of the
That's
fittest.
a question, because trust me, I can't begin to tell you how much of a question that is for the young generations. That if I've done a master's, why isn't that enough? Why do I need to keep learning? Why do I need to keep training? So it would be great to hear from you.
The masters has helped you get the grade and get into a company. Thereafter, the masters is not going to help you much. You need to update yourself and get new, skill set developed and added on. So, extending the Darwinian, theory of survival of the fittest, I would just want to say that in current VUCA world, constant updation of the knowledge and skill set is extremely important. Beside upgrading yourself, you need to add new things. I mean, you can't be relying on what has helped you, achieve success a couple of years ago. May not guarantee you a success tomorrow. So, goes without saying, you need to update yourself day in and day out. Don't even think about next year I'll update. May not be there. So, updating yourself on a daily basis, whatever it is, whatever little you can add, please keep doing it, and that's what is absolutely necessary.
Sarosh, well, thank you so much, Mr. Pai. Sarosh, what would you like to add to what Mr. Pai already said?
Okay, so the word luxury itself says that, it's not an essential. Everybody can do without it, and I think the global pandemic is such a situation which has opened a lot of retrospect for many people, saying that while I was running behind these things, I can't even use them right now. The guy who has a Lamborghini is parked in the garage, his Canali or Xenia suits, or maybe even the bespoke wear is lying in his wardrobe. Okay. So I especially want to address it to the young audience over here. Please understand that you are not selling something tangible. Okay. It is not about the money. It is about the service. Okay. And please understand that a person whom you are serving at the other end, okay, he's made a lot of money, okay, he's an experienced person, he's a global traveler, he's been exposed to a lot many things than what the brand that you work for has exposed you to. Your brand has mainly taught you to represent the brand's ideology, heritage, product in a certain manner. The onus is on you to upgrade yourself and learn more about what is beyond your parameter. Whether you are in an office, whether you are in the front line, whether you're on the sales floor, it is extremely important that you upgrade your skill sets in terms to understanding to what are the fancies of people who consume your product. What other products are they looking for? What are interests? I mean, say for example, if you know that one of your clients is an avid golfer, you better well buck up and learn about golf. It doesn't necessarily. It's not necessary for you to take a 50 lakh membership at Willington Gymkhana to go and learn golf. I'm sorry, the net is out there, information is out there. Talk to him 5 lines about golf and you'll floor him for life. He's going to be your client. Experiences are not about saying that, oh, I'm going to get you a cup of tea in a silver tray and that's how you'll be pleased. No, I'm sorry. Touch the personal touch points of clients, and that's what will set the differentiator. He can buy a suit anywhere in the world. Why should he come to you? He can buy a watch anywhere in the world. Why should he come to you? It's your personal touch points. It's relationships. Brands have been there since the past 100 years, and their heritage will continue even after you are not there. But while you are there, you will make your client only come to you if your experience is impeccable.
Thank you, Mr. Modi, for bringing that golf angle. I would like to tell one incident that happened in my life. It was again a customer who was an avid golfer. He asked me, "Are you aware of the golfing game?" I said, "Sir, you can talk about the first 18 holes, but I'm aware of the 19th hole. What can be done?" And you won't believe that deal was done at that particular point of time. There was no discussion on the price or anything.
Exactly. You didn't even talk horsepower. You didn't even talk what the other competition has to offer you, why your product is better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. my question, now the question that I'm going to ask is kind of related to the previous question as well, but I'm going to ask it to Richa and Delna, and of course I'd like Veera, Mr. Pai, Sarosh to step in. Given that when you moved into the luxury sector, there were very few, I would say non-existent programs in luxury or education in luxury or learning luxury, doing a master's, doing a bachelor's, doing a top up or whatever. Now that you are, I would say most of you are 10 years down the line, working, hiring, recruiting at a very, very senior level. When you look at recruiting candidates, I'm not even talking about internships here, but when you're looking at placements, is that a filter for you? Like, would you prefer having someone who's gone through that exposure, who's gone through that master's training, or who's gone through that entire grill? When you're looking at certain, maybe let's say middle management, entry level plus I would say middle management position, then maybe you can explain the difference. That when you're looking at certain positions, maybe you do prefer, and maybe for certain positions it doesn't matter, because that's a constant, I would say, challenge that they don't understand, or they have questions like, why do I need to get that education or that exposure? So I'd maybe start with Richa. You can start and we can have Delna. Yes.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So I can go. So no excuse with being with ladies first, because both are ladies. So I'll go first anyway. So yeah, I think there were a couple of discussions already around whether the background really matters or not. And I remember Ajit, Delna, all of you talking about that. You've hired freshers as well, and they've done pretty well. And my experience has not been different. We've hired freshers. We've hired people who came from different industries. They were not from Alcobev. They were not from luxury, but they still did pretty well because the basic commercial acumen was there, right? I think beyond that, so my message to the audience would be that it might add value if you already have a background or experience, but don't consider that as a limiting factor to become a part of luxury industry. But yes, I think communication is a given. So we need to tell brand stories. We need to be able to tell our brand stories to the consumer. Unless you are able to do that, I don't think I think that's kind of become a norm in any kind of industry today, that communication, your ability to tell stories around your brands, around your work becomes pertinent, becomes very, very important. So that's something which is critical. And another piece that I've already talked about, and I think beautiful discussions just some time back, Veera also mentioned that it's very important to be able to have that bent of mind that you want to learn. You want to be curious. You want to continuously keep learning, and also given the kind of technological advancements that we have seen, and luxury is not an industry which is away from that. There have been digital disruptions. If I talk about my own industry, we've done sessions which are virtual tasting sessions. Sometime back, we may not even have thought of doing something like this. There are brand ambassadors who are in a virtual setup, guiding consumers from their bar collection to make cocktails. Yeah. So these are the kind of disruptions, initiatives, innovation that people are dealing with right now. And the question that do you have to keep learning even after attaining an MBA degree? I think it answers it all. The kind of innovations, the kind of disruptions that are happening out there in the market, it makes it impossible to survive unless you're continuously learning. So I think these would be my submission for this question, Smita.
Sure. Thank you so much, Richa. Delna, what are your thoughts on this?
I think Richa has put it all together really well. So thank you, Richa. I think the only thing I'd like to add here is that it's a foot in the door, right? Doing a course today, whether it's an MBA for luxury or any other course today, it's just a foot in the door that gives you the opportunity to be interviewed. After that, you still need to perform. It all depends on how well versed you are. I think I would also look at it from a point of view of how comfortable are you with luxury? Like they mentioned earlier, it's not really about the fact that do I own a Mercedes. It's about the fact that I'm comfortable with dealing with that consumer. It's about the fact that I feel confident and I feel passionate about the products. Today, for all of our products in luxury, it's not that there's no cheaper substitute available. It's just that consumer desires to have better. So how is it that you can improve that experience for the consumer? And if you can do that, and if you can convince us at an interview level that you have the domain knowledge and you can do that, then for me, it doesn't matter where you come from or what course you've done. That's what we are primarily looking for. So yes, we do have people from INSEAD and from your college as well, and from other luxury institutes, but we do have people who do not have a master's as well, because they can still do the job well. So I think that's typically what we are looking for all the time.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Smita,
Yes.
Smita, I just this is a question that always intrigues me, and I can't help but
Sure, please
talk
go
about
ahead.
this.
Absolutely.
So look at it from a person who's hiring. So a person who's hiring, they look at the name of a college. So in this case, let's just take an example of SPJ, and we say it's a great place, so let us go there. So in that context, this particular master's or any program that you do in the college becomes very relevant. So I think that's important. However, the bigger challenge is this, that my future decisions to come back to the company is what all your students do in the organization. So I'd like to go back to saying, and all of us in this panel will tell you that the greatest joy that you need to have is to be standing in the store and delivering a great customer experience. If you're not happy doing that, if a master's has gone to your head and tells you that I am destined for more, I am happy. But I am destined for more and I'm not ready to do something now, I think that's the death knell.
Absolutely.
And you would have, I'm sure everybody would have heard this in all our space. I remember Ajit and Suresh speak. All of us say that, you know, the greatest joy is to go to the store and sell a product at any level. And I'm sure Sarosh, Ajit, all of us would be doing this, and I'm sure about it. So by about 170 people in this conversation, I think each of you and each of us have to go back to the institution that you're going to work in, and be, what do I say, joyous, happy, positive, and create a difference in that place. My biggest challenge is that in some of these colleges, the recruiters don't want to go back because they are saying, you know what, people here have their head not on their shoulders, they have their head on their head. Then you don't want to go back. So that's my request and submission. Just like hotels, hospitality, hospitals and doctoring and retail, these are industries where you need to work on the shop floor, otherwise you're lost the game.
Absolutely. I think that was wonderfully put and very relevant, because I completely get, you know, where you're coming from, because that is exactly what we keep telling our students as well. Like, there's one thing to get the degree, but then after that you have to make a mark in the organization that you're going. You have to be open, flexible, eager to learn. So don't think that you know everything already just because you finished your masters. So I think that's very, very important. I can
somebody
yeah.
When somebody asks me, why don't you come to the college, I ask that person, you need to talk to all your seniors on what made them make me make this decision. I think that's so important.
Thank you for that, Veera. I think there was, yes.
Sorry, can I just say something, please?
Sure, yes, absolutely.
I think coming from a premier institute, wherever it may be, either it's India, either it's abroad, so be it. I mean, fine, you do need a good education. It is the basis and the foundation for the rest of your years to come. But I think many of the young minds today are looking at it this way, that okay, I'm gonna complete my graduation, I'm gonna do my degree in my luxury studies, and I'm just gonna make beeline for the most popular brand out there, and I'm gonna try my luck. Okay, why are you doing that? Have you not learned anything from your environment, where they teach you to think analytically, to approach problems, to define and come up with solutions? Why is there such a less of an entrepreneurial spirit in the young minds today?
Absolutely.
I mean, you are smart. I mean, as Veera pointed out, I mean, our age is immigrants, and I mean, it's sometimes even difficult for me to post 3 stories on Instagram in a day. Okay, whether you and your generation have been born with smartphones and iPads and everything. I mean, you guys are into it. So why are you only limiting your thought, your process, your creativity, your instinct, your ambition to just go and work for someone? Why can't you do something on your own? Why can't you be the example? Why can't you create something that the company that once wanted to work with you wants to join hands with you today? You know, come up with fresh ideas. And this is the right age and the right time. Your 20s to your 30s, okay? Go and fail as many times as you want. Go and do it. Because today, when I look back, okay, I wish I had done that. I wish I had done that, because I mean, today I'm not at the luxury of time. You know, I'm not, okay, I have my experience, but so be it. But this is the very essence that I have spent 23 years in this industry. I'm sincerely telling you, all the young ones out there, explore, think, dwell into yourself, and go and think of the big idea. Okay, and if you can't do it on your own, take it to the companies which you aspire to work with. But just don't go blindly and say that, yes, I want to do a job, and I'm willing to do the job. I mean, and then I don't think you need an education. Then you need an instructor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so
just,
much.
Just to add to what Sarosh has said, some of the guys who comes out of these premier institutions, they are, in a hurry to have a immediate gratification, immediate success. That's not going to happen so easily in professional life. You need to slog it out. You need to be patient. I'm not saying, it's going to happen. There could be some of the brilliant minds who taste success on day one, but all of us are not those brilliant minds. So we need to pursue with a goal, have a bigger picture, pursue, be, have patience, and then keep exploring yourself. Don't let your dream die just in a year or two. Success is bound to come. I can tell you today, I have a designation, a fancy designation, but for the first 14 years of my life, I had to go through a lot of struggle. But thereafter, yeah, because I pursued what I wanted to do, and that's what has happened. It takes time. It's not going to happen in a year or two anywhere.
I think, may I add something, Smita? I think the whole perception of a lot of students who join luxury courses, especially in India, are people who think that, okay, if I do a luxury course versus doing another MBA, I sort of have a strong footing into a higher paying job or into a more cushy job. I want to correct that myth. That doesn't exist. Luxury pays like everybody else. It's not, the product may be more expensive, but when you are doing a compensation, it's not that the compensation is more expensive, right? It's not, that's not how it works. It's still a business. I think the other thing I would like to say is that luxury course or not, you have to put your foot in and you have to work. So whether you are doing an online website for Estee Lauder companies or Mercedes-Benz, or you're doing it for Flipkart, it doesn't matter, because the fact is that you need to be good at what you do. You need to understand who is your consumer, and you need to be able to be successful at that. I think a lot of questions come in of, what is the point then that I spend so much money doing an MBA? I mean, that was really your choice, and you cannot push the organization to answer that question for you. I understand a lot of you may feel that I did this course, so I'm more privileged and I need to be treated differently. Please correct that myth right away. Do not go into an organization thinking that you are a privilege. It's not like that. It's just that you have a foot into the door. And I always say that you have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to look at a luxury job the same way as you would look at any other job, because it is finally a job. It is a platform for you to get an opportunity to learn. It's nothing more than that. And I'm seeing some of the questions, and that's why I picked this up to just say that, yes, maybe you have paid a lot of money, but honestly, that's really just your privilege that you are one of those people who are fortunate enough to do that today for yourselves.
Absolutely.
So take advantage of that, learn more, and just...
And may I just add, because I'm also, I'm at the end, where the student is getting ready to step foot in, as you said, you have your step into the door. Luxury, especially I would say in India, it's a very, very niche group of people. There could be, I would say, you will have growth, you'll grow. But of course, as you all said, if you're expecting that you'll grow within a day, that's not going to happen. But at the end of the day, what could, if I may say so, audiences and panelists, what could create a difference would be the knowledge that you gain from the program, whether it's a general MBA or a luxury MBA. In some cases, if you've not had exposure, growing up with respect to luxury goods, or you've not, have had that experience of traveling abroad, a program like this will definitely expose you to that, which is what you need. But that doesn't mean that you will suddenly, be offered a job of a CEO. You have to start small steps, baby steps, but this program will definitely get you a long-term success and growth because you have that base, the knowledge base. So that is
Smita,
very important. Yes, yes,
Smita, if
yes.
you don't mind, I
Sure.
think Delna and Sarosh put it very well. I'm just
Yeah.
wanting to be on the side of the student here. To me, one, I think you put it very well. If you have not had the luxury of being, what do I say, using and acquiring these luxury products, a program like this helps you quicken the pace.
Again, yeah.
That's one. The second thing, it gets you a foot in the door, which you may not get in other places. But I think the advantage of a course of any kind, whether if you're going into any industry, is that once you come in, you're able to learn faster, adapt faster, be able to understand the nuances faster. So hopefully between 3 to 8 years time, this will come into play.
Yes.
So like I think Sarosh said that, Sarosh or Ajit said, it's the instant gratification piece. You may have to give it 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So in the long run, between 3 to 7 years, you will notice that it gives you an advantage. So that's the way you need to play the game.
Add a point which boils down to what you said as an answer, all of you, to the first question I asked, attitude and motivation of the person. Because they are learning, they've gotten, but the attitude after getting the job is also very important. It helps, in their career graph. So absolutely, thank you so much. I think Dalna, Veera, Mr. Pai, Sarosh, for those very, very fact-based answers, because the more I would say honest and transparent we are, the more it's going to help the audiences. And I can see questions popping up from the audiences, and I would just like to tell the audiences we're already a little bit, we've crossed over time. So I will just conclude with my last one question. And after that, I will take 2 questions only from the audience, after which we will conclude because we've already crossed our time. So my last question to all the panelists is, do you foresee the current situation, of course, because we are talking about, even though the pandemic, as you all said, is slowly unlocking, but because of this, or as a result of this pandemic situation, do you see any new, I would say, roles or any new trainings or any new opportunities opening up in the near future in the luxury sector that you would like to, maybe advise young professionals or working professionals on, that you feel that because of this or as a result of this, we could have something different, we could have something new, we could have some innovation with respect to hiring, with respect to training, with respect to, I think opportunities in the luxury sector? So
I think brands are going to be, of course, most brands have already started ideating and some of them have already implemented, but I think there's been a huge digital shift. But with the luxury industry, as I said, it's just not going to be a product. Of course, the product is it's an extremely important part of it, but I think new and innovative ways to reach out to people and sort of having an amalgamation between digital and personalized services would be the next step to it. So I think content, even content creation, reaching out to people. Luxury is all about storytelling, so I see a lot, like even with media right now, what's been happening is that the way even people are advertising, even the generic advertising is sort of going out. Like, you don't just have a still page anymore and you just print it and write your name below it and that's about it. No, I think it's about telling stories. It's about involving people. Certain brands are involving their consumers. Some people are sort of telling stories about how somebody has inspired something and then they are correlating it back. So I think a lot many opportunities will come out for people in content creation. I think brands are looking at new ways of communicating. It's about and of course
tech savvy content
see, it's not only about tech. So say normally people turn around and say, but I can't code. Okay, so you must understand that when we say tech savvy, I mean, the guys who actually do the technical work, okay, are really focused on the technical work, but you need somebody to give them a creative direction because they have all the tools to create, but they essentially don't know what to create and how to communicate it. So I guess you will need somebody to, take that communication forward. So that I think is very important. Even from the storefront, I mean, how you're dealing with your clients right now. I don't know how Delna is going to be and her brands are going to be innovating. I mean, considering if still there's a no-touch policy. I mean, I know for a fact that I don't let even my own employees come within 6 feet of my distance. So I mean, let alone a customer going, for a makeup session. So it is extremely challenging.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I
Yes.
think, Smita, if I may add, one of the things I think everyone must look at is, while we talk about tech and online, we must look at data analytics, because a lot of part of your customer story comes from data, especially when you start selling online and through e-commerce channels. So how good are you at data? How does that data that you can get from your sales data, how do you tell a story with that, and what is it that you can do? How can you bring in innovation with reaching the right consumer and changing and tweaking your products and your offerings through that story? So I think data analytics is becoming a part that we must look at. So when we look at the whole online revolution, I really look at how good is that person and how willing is that person to spend those hours looking at that data.
Even something like social media marketing was not a thing, like I would say 10 years ago, and today it is. And it's a need. It's a need of the hour for brands to hire people who have those little bit of skill sets, and that I would say the vibe that they know what's trending, what people want. So very, very rightly put together, Telna and Sarosh. Veera, I can see you. Yes, Mr.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, in automotive sector, also in luxury segment, with everything shifting to omni-channel presence, just not digital, whether it's social platforms or anything else, everybody is focusing on how can I, continue to give that experience to the customer, because finally luxury is just not an online discount and sale. You need to give the experience to the customer. So these are some of the areas I think there could be some, opportunities that are coming up. Earlier, gone are the days where you have one marketing manager who's looking at the print media and putting everything in auto cruise. Okay, so much of spends done. No, that's not going to work anymore. You need to find out where can I invest, whether it's going to give me results, and how can I enhance the customer experience with my brand. I mean, that is the kind of areas that will open up, and anybody who's with a fresh mindset, new ideas, out of the box thinking kind of attitude and the capabilities are sure going to find some jobs. It may not be very exciting to start with, but then yes, there are openings that are going to come up in these particular areas is what is my take. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Veera, would you like to add something before we start taking questions?
No, it's okay. Nothing.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, but Richa had to log out. She was facing some technical trouble at her end. So audiences, I think our panel has been very, very insightful, very engaging. And we've had most of the topics covered that I wished to, cover through this webinar. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to be able to only, I think, probably take one question from the audience. I apologize for that. But what I do promise is I will send few, like a gist of questions to my panelists, and I would request them to, if possible, send out some answers so that we can share it with the audiences at a later date. I'm going to pick this question with context to digital, because we spoke a lot about digital, and that's I think the need of the hour. With so much emphasis on digital marketing nowadays, and it seems like digital is the future. What is your take on traditional 360-degree marketing, especially BTL? Is that not going to stay so relevant? That's a question coming from the audience. Ishan Saxena has asked this question. So whoever wishes to answer can start. It's not addressed to anybody in particular.
I think BTL has taken a halt because we were forced to take a halt. Otherwise, I mean, of course, the digital presence has been building, but I think if you keep a track of the last 7 to 8 years to how much each of the brands have been spending on BTL activities, it's I mean they rather sort of cut their spending on ATL and invest it in BTL. So I think the BTL right now is it's on a temporary halt. I mean, till of course we are all trying to sort of find a solution, but I think once the solution is found, we will be back to BTL and we will be
Luxury is all
back to
about
BTL.
BTL.
Sorry.
Luxury, when you talk about luxury brands, it's more about BTL, so
Yeah,
it's
of course. And I mean, and when we do come back to BTL, when we are all comfortable about it, I think we'll come back twofold stronger and with much more innovative experiences. And there will be a willingness for the people, at least for the next 6 months, people would not be sort of ignoring your invitations. They will say, yes, I'm coming,
But shouldn't like the question, yes, Veera, yes.
So, Smita, you know what's happening today in the world, maybe because we're all sitting at home. We are looking at two ends of the spectrum. So when somebody says digital is in, the reality today is that across most categories, your digital spends in India is less than about 6%. Okay. And that is in some big categories. In how much ever we want to talk about in luxury, I see a long way off till you have, anything more than 10-12% spends from consumers coming into digital. It's a long way off. I completely agree with Mr. Sarosh in the sense that now there was no opportunity. So when Sarosh wants to spend on BTL, there is nothing to do because there's nobody out on the streets. So that's going to come in. I think what is going to happen, there's going to be a shift of some portion from digital to the other side. So I like this example of Netflix. The question saying, are you watching Netflix or Amazon or Hotstar is irrelevant. They are watching all of it. So today there's no question to say, will you watch Netflix or will you go to the movies? No, both are available. It's just that today the movies are not there. When they're going to come back, there is a relevance for movies. If somebody sees the stock market today, there has been no movie released in the last 4.5 months. There's going to be no movie released for the next 3 months. But the stock prices of those companies have not gone down.
Yeah.
Whether it is PVR or Inox, I think they are at about 70% higher rate. So from a consumer's mindset, I don't think there is an either or. It's a mix of both.
Yeah, both are going to coexist once this COVID things are over, especially in the luxury industry. But yes, what conventional spends that would have gone into BTL might have taken a little bit toll, and then apportioning of the budgets in terms of marketing ideas and other things have started going towards the digital. But I completely agree with Sarosh here. Yes, it's a matter of time before the BTL activities also will come into the picture. But yes, I do have apprehension about how long this brick and mortar business model is going to go along in luxury. The way things have changed in China and the way it has moved in digital platforms. So maybe we'll see a smaller size of stores and with lesser products on display and more on digital. That could be very much a possibility.
Shouldn't digital any which ways be seen as an enabler for BTL activities? It can enable, it can enhance. So I think that's also a way to look at it. Any parting thoughts? I think we are going to, I'm sorry audiences, we couldn't take all your questions, but as I said, I'll try to email your questions to the panelists, and I request them to give few minutes of their time to maybe respond so that we can send the answers back to you. Any parting thoughts that you would like to express, or any messages to the audiences? A lot of young professionals and students are listening to you right now. So I think before we part, we just like maybe one short sentence from each one of you, and after that we'll just ask you to smile for a picture, for a memory keepsake, and then we can close. Thank you.
Smita, hi, I'd like to go first. Wherever possible, I've answered some questions. I've been working for quite a few years. So for everybody on this group, the times have been tough in the last 4 months, and times will be tough over the next 8 months. But anything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I think we'll have to tide over this. This is not the time for fearing that this is the end of the world. Tough times ahead, absolutely. It's for all of us, and everybody sitting on this panel have had very tough times in the last 4 months. We continue to have tough times over the next 1 year. And if Ajit says, I mean, he's a CEO, I know that he's having a tough time, and same with Sarosh and same with everybody else. So it's just a question of time. I think we should just allow it to move, and we should be okay.
I mean,
That is such a positive attitude. I wish I could literally record, your message right now and play it every day to my students. I think that's a wonderful thought, and absolutely agreed. Delna, what would you like to say to that, add to that, like a parting message?
I think Veera put it very well. I think, the same way organizations are finding it difficult, and I think I can speak for myself. We are really not recruiting as much right now. And I'm sure other organizations are facing the same thing. So I can imagine from a student's point of view, it's an apprehension, right? How will I get placed? What's going on in the industry? And I saw some questions there which we couldn't answer. I think one thing is stay positive, have the attitude of putting your foot into the door. So if it may not be the ideal role, it may not be the best package, but it will come your way, and be open to getting what you can. And you will always move on from there. So if it's tough for the industry, it's tough for students, it's tough for everybody, but it will pass, and you need to just give yourself that little extra time. And while you have that time, use that time to learn more, to sort of learn more about the industry, spend more time learning about companies that you're really interested in, because right now you have the luxury of time, which you definitely won't once you start a full-time job.
Absolutely. Well said, Delna. Thank you so much. Mr. Pai, Sarosh, what about?
Tough times doesn't last, but tough people with positive attitude and a lot of flair and positivity do last. So my only, parting message is do have a dream, do have a goal, bigger picture, pursue that. Don't really be bothered about the destination, but enjoy the journey that every day you take, and that will take you somewhere. And at the end of the day, you will be at a place where you wish to be. So please enjoy the journey of your career.
Thank you so much for that. Sarosh, what about you? Any?
I mean, I'm just going to simplify it. I mean, of course, it resonates with the thoughts shared by my fellow panelists over here. But I think in a game of snakes and ladders, I mean, sometimes you get small snakes, and unfortunately, this time around in 2020, we got the biggest snake possible. So even though we've come back to number 2 or number 3 back in the board, it doesn't mean you're out of the game. You got to climb back again, and eventually the game is over when you win, and that's something you need to remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go on and do your thing.
Absolutely. When those long ladders are not there, please climb on each step every day, and you will go ahead. Absolutely.
Listen to Ajit, there are no shortcuts in this business. Huh?
Absolutely no.
Yeah.
So I would request all my wonderful panelists to now just maybe for a minute, just to maybe if you want to fold your hands, if you want us to do some kind of a gesture for a picture, and then we can conclude the panel. So Akshay, Priyanka, one of you, just requesting you to capture the moment, and requesting the panelists to just smile, and or any gesture that you wish to write. I'm just going to do the positive sign, because that's something that I always believe in, to stay positive. Thumbs up.
Stay positive, thumbs up.
Absolutely. So we can do the thumbs up this time. So Sarosh, requesting you to thumbs up as well. Thank you so much. Please capture the moment, and thank you for being here. Much appreciated.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here and sharing our thoughts and learning so many things. Thank you.
Thank you so much
for making us famous, Smita. Thank you very much.